Welcome to Rep Your Brand, a podcast for B2B marketers who are looking to build their career through a strong personal brand. Rep Your Brand is hosted by Nick Bennett, one of LinkedIn's top voices on field marketing and personal branding. In each episode, Nick captures stories on how to overcome the challenges marketers face with growing their brand. So, if you're a marketer looking to open doors and create opportunities that you never thought were possible, then listen in to get tangible tips and strategies to build your very own personal brand.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rep Your Brand, a podcast for B2B marketers who are looking to build their careers through a strong personal brand. I'm Nick Bennett. This podcast is brought to you by my friends at Motion. They're a done-for-you podcasting service for scrappy marketing teams in B2B tech. They're two of the nicest guys around, and the work they do is truly world-class. You can find them at motionagency.io. And today I'm excited. This one is something that I've been waiting for a while. Our guest is Evan Patterson. If you aren't following him, an absolute legend in the space on LinkedIn. I'll let Evan introduce himself. Evan, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I've listened and watched many of the episodes, and I've seen your content on LinkedIn for Lord knows how long now. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. All right. So the theme of what I wanted to talk about today was a couple things. So like influencer, sales, marketing, social selling, personal branding. And I'll kind of get into my first kind of question for you and thoughts around that. In your mind, what are the pros and cons of leveraging sales influencers for personal branding?
Oof. So it could be a lot of the cons are also pros. The cons if you do it wrong. So for me, when I'm working with sales influencers, I really focus on not just like the numbers, but the ethics, the morals, the alignment between the brand, which is our brand, their personal brand, and also the brands of the companies that they're already working with or for. You have to make sure of all those things are all, 10 to 10. There's no lesser, you can't do less than 100% on this. Because like people won't buy from somebody who's an a-hole. People won't buy from somebody who's supporting bad products, or they're partnering with a company that has a great product but unethical business practices, and the list goes on and on and on. So I have a very high bar for the type of people that I work with, and that doesn't mean followers and engagement. That means the quality of who you are.
I love that. Absolutely. And I'm curious because I wrote a post on this yesterday afternoon, and it was around the fact, it's LinkedIn specifically, but I feel like in B2C, but when people are doing paid partnerships, whether it's like partner ad, whatever, it's easy to tell on TikTok, Instagram, but I feel like LinkedIn's a little bit different. And I use the example as like, if I'm looking at buying like enterprise software, let's say 75 grand, again, it's a bit of an extreme situation, but
Yeah.
I take Evan's advice of like, oh, okay, Evan told me to go check out this product. I'm going to go check it out, champion it, buy it. Turns out Evan actually never used the product, but was just getting paid to do it. And now I lose my job because the product actually is a piece of shit. So like, I'm curious on your thoughts on that, because I feel like, again, in B2B, the whole influencer space and like being paid to do sponsored content, partnerships, brand deals, things like that is lagging B2C. But like, I feel like LinkedIn doesn't enforce this as like part of like their terms of service. And I'm curious on your thoughts on like, what do you think about like that whole thing? Because it got me fired up and people kind of like debated me a little bit on both sides.
And so I think the reason why it can't be enforced is because when you are working for you work at Salesforce, you're already doing influencer marketing. So like one could argue that it's a law that's not enforceable, right? Like it's the same thing. So it's not practical. For a rule to make sense, it has to be enforceable, and they're not enforceable. You're already promoting a brand. People who work at Salesforce didn't buy Salesforce. People who work at Salesforce are getting paid by Salesforce to work at Salesforce, and therefore by proxy talk about it. So influence marketing is just the same thing. I'm onboarded as a contractor, right? And as somebody who works with influencers, I'm onboarding influencers as contractors. And they are usually what happens, at least I can't speak for other influencers, but the way that I do brand deals when I am on the receiving end of them and the giving end is usually the same. Where either A, it'll be a product that I already use and already love, or B, they'll come to me and go, hey, we would love to do a brand deal with you. Try our product out. let us know if this makes sense. Like they know that I'm not going to say yes unless I like their product, and I'm going to use their product. I'll be completely transparent. Say Focus, one of those companies that I never used their product before hearing of them and doing a brand deal with them. They came to me, they pitched me their product with the intention of, and they made it clear from day one, like, of doing a brand deal with them. And I've been playing around with the tool. I'm afraid to set it up right now too much more because at the time of recording, I'm about to be starting. I'm looking to start a new full-time role soon. So I want to set it up with whatever that new full-time role is in mind. But I fell in love with the product and I was like, yeah, let's do this brand deal. Like this makes total sense. So to your point, right? Like I don't want to ever work with influencers to be the influencer that does that because that is when I do think LinkedIn would start to get angry. That is when I do think LinkedIn would start to change their rules. One thing I do advocate for, and I wish LinkedIn did, was have like sponsored tags like in the post because there are laws about like you have to make it known to people, right? And like I do make it known to people in the sense that one, I don't pretend that it's not. So the laws regarding sponsored content are that you have to make it explicitly known. They're that you have to make it, you're not allowed to pretend that's not.
Yeah.
So that's the rule there. The other thing is like good influencer marketing shouldn't look like influencer marketing. There's a big difference between like those TikTok ads that you see that literally say like ad, right? Versus a TikToker going like, I use this when I do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be able to tell when I tag somebody when there's money behind it. And I think the people that do what we do for a living can tell, but the average person shouldn't be able to.
Exactly. Oh, it's glad that you kind of like mentioned a lot of that though, because I feel like, there's people, and I've seen this before because I know like there's people that are getting paid for things and like they just don't disclose. And like again, like we could tell, but like the average person that like might look up to these people that have over 100,000 followers or something, and like goes and champions a product because like they were told by a random person on LinkedIn to like go check it out. Like again, you should always do your research and not just trust
Yeah.
one person's
I'm
judgment.
talking at a very
but-
overly simplified level here too, in case anybody's curious. There's a lot more that we can't shove into this episode.
100%. Cool. So let's talk about like influencer marketing as a whole. And this is something where, I mean, similar to you, I've been on the receiving side. I've been running campaigns with others as well. And I love that we're both like similar in that aspect. How do you feel like you can use it like in personal branding efforts? And I've been trying to even like get away from like the personal branding like efforts like word and more so like focusing on like building an audience because I feel like that's starting to resonate more. Plus, I feel like the personal branding piece is like played out a little bit. And again, it's, everyone's is doing it. So I'm curious on your thoughts on both of those things.
Yeah, I think the hard part when it comes to all things personal branding is that the blueprint, it changes per person, right?
Yeah.
So for me, like I have my own in my mind, like content pillars, right? So I've got Evan, the sales dev hat. I've got Evan, the marketing hat. And then I got Evan, like the DEI queer hat, right? So when I do like influencer marketing brand deals and stuff like that, I think which content pillar do they fall under? Most of them are like sales tech and marketing tech. I very rarely get any sort of brand deals in the DEI queer context. And I could have a whole far TED talk as to why that, like, I know why that happens that way. There's no money in that space, but why it's awful at the same time. But it is, I focus on creating a audience as well, right? I focus on creating a community. I am a community marketer at the end of the day, right? That is my bread and butter. Even when I was SDR, I did community marketing. I took the job description and shoved it out the window. I didn't give a shit. I don't care what you're telling me to do. I want to do what makes the most money for the company. So I take those skill sets and apply them to myself. I think that's why I'm good at my 9 to 5 because I use myself as the playground at the testing lab and all that stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens as more and more companies experiment with this because I don't think there's an answer to that question yet that matches most people. Like I just explained, there's a lot of things that a normal everyday marketer at a company without a personal brand does that I apply to want to do, right? The content pillars, the balancing of the subjects, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of things that I do that they don't need to even consider due to their job description, but they're starting to need to consider due to the job description in the future of marketing. So I don't think anyone has an answer to that question yet. Keyword yet.
I agree with you. Yeah, and I think 2023 will hopefully play a big piece into that, and it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see like how things kind of to play out there because I've talked to a lot of people, and again, I think it's interesting because I feel like what B2B is lacking is like more of a like an influencer hub. Like, you know how B2C has all these platforms that you can like, like I need someone that is an SME for this type of product or something like that. Like, I feel like B2B needs that. And as far as I know, I don't think there's really like any like go-to platform that like solves this issue right now.
There's a couple that are popping up that
Okay.
that shall remain nameless in this podcast because one of them is terrible because it's nothing but bots. Like it's people that bought their followers. So the creators are bots, but their followers are bots.
Yep.
Oh, the other one, at the time of recording, recently released an extremely rigged, very white cis male list. And if you know, you know. And if you're offended, good. Slide into my DM so I can say it again. But the goal was to hurt your feelings. There is no go-to hub to answer your question.
Yep.
Yes, there are two people that have tried and failed and will continue to fail.
That's good to know. I don't think I've come. Oh, okay.
I already know where you're. Yeah, I know you knew. You figured out. The light bulb just went on. We'll talk after we hit the record button. Stop.
I definitely agree with you there.
Can motion keep this bit in, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. All right, let's pivot to social selling because I know that's something that you're big at. And like, I feel like many people confuse social selling as synonymous with like personal branding.
Oh,
like,
thank God somebody else said it before me.
Like, what's the difference between the two? Like let's just dive into that. Like, spew anything that you want to spew. Like, let's talk about it.
Okay, so those that are good at it already know this.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. Those that are great at it don't need to be told this. But for the rest of the people in the world, so personal branding is everything that we've been speaking about up until this point.
Yep.
Social selling is when you start taking that personal brand and doing something with it at a one-to-one level. You are doing what an SDR does or an outbound AE does in the outbound part of their day to generate traffic and leads and qualified meetings, whatever the hell that means for your organization, through the means of social media. And your personal brand is fueling that higher reply rate. So, for example, like you could be using the post-bound strategy, which I've spoken about literally hundreds of times to the point where I want to drop dead. But, like you find people talking about things, right? And then you DM them based on what they've already said, because then the reply rate's super high. Like I'm talking like 90%.
Wow.
And the yes rate, I think I can count on one hand the number of no's I've received with the strategy. So, but then there's the other of like, you DM somebody and they already just know your name. So your pitch slap's not a pitch slap because you've been talking about mimosas or drag queens or sports or whatever you have in common for weeks already, right? So at that point, it's like my best friend Marshall saying, "Hey, Evan, you should try this new skincare product." He works in skincare industry. That's not a pitch slap. That's a friend coming to me saying, "Hey, I know you and I think you'll give a shit about this." Pardon my French. I didn't ask if I can swear in this.
Oh yeah, you can. You're good. You're good.
Okay, awesome. There we go. All right. I could go on and on about the differences. Like social selling could also, like Tom Slocum's great at combining cold calling with social, right? When he cold calls somebody, the hang up rate's lower because people already know his name. They already like him, right? So he can go straight to the pitch without it being a pitch slap because he's already built this like rapport with this person. Even if he's never specifically said anything to them. If Cher calls me, I don't care what this woman has to say, I'm listening to her, right? Like it's that effect. So Sarah Brazier at Gong is the poster child of this. So Sarah, by the way, if you hear this, start posting more. I miss you. So that's the difference between personal branding and social selling. Personal branding fuels social selling. You do not need personal branding to do social selling, but I've never met a strong social seller who doesn't have a strong personal brand. But also, personal branding doesn't mean social media, and social selling also doesn't mean social media. And if you don't know the answer to that question, DM me. I have a consulting rate you can look into.
I love that. Yeah, and no, like, and I'm curious, like, how can we incorporate? Because you talk about like social media, like, how can we incorporate social media into our existing sales motion? I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but I feel like there's so many people that want to figure this out, even internally. Like at Alice, like we talk about this all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
how do we incorporate, the social selling and social media into our like existing processes that are set up? Like, what do you recommend typically?
This is what gets me in trouble. Don't hire people that aren't social savvy in the first place to be on your sales
Yeah.
team. Can't train someone who is adverse to social media to be good at social media. So, like most things in the world, right? You have to want to do it to be good at it. I will blame my upbringing for this because I'm terrible. I'm absolutely shit at chemistry and physics, and I would get like straight A's like English and social studies, and like I finished my entire year's worth of French homework at French, like AP French, in like weeks. Like it's not like a couple of weeks, right? But when it came to like math and physics and chemistry, oh my god, it was like asking a quadriplegic to climb Mount Everest in the dark. It's not possible. So I would say that like, I leaned into the fact that if I like it, I'm probably going to be great at it. So you have to hire people that have like a natural interest in social media, aren't afraid to put themselves out there. They're not afraid to get on that soapbox. They're not afraid to deal with the hate and the bullshit that comes with it. They're really good at, they have really good EQ. They have a lot of self-awareness. They're creative. And the most offensive, and I mean this intentionally to be offensive, they're not boring. A lot of sales reps are really good at having a conversation in a demo. They're really bad at keeping like an audience's attention for long periods of time. But that's because they're not hired for that. They're not trained for that, and they're not paid to do that. So therefore, no one cares or looks for that in the interview process. So I don't think that salespeople are dumb or bad. There's a place for them still. I think it's going to be like a Carvana business model. They're going to turn into order takers, and they're going to turn into the people that hold your hand through the sales motion. But social sellers are going to take over the outbound, I'm pretty sure.
I love that you broke that down, because I've actually, out of all the podcasts that I've done, at least on my show, like I haven't had anyone come on and talk about like the social selling side of it. So I'm curious on like how can we boost reply? And I know you talked about this a little bit more so on like the LinkedIn DMs, but how can we boost like reply rates to emails around
Yeah.
social selling efforts?
Lavender is fantastic at this. The company, not just the product. Dorothy Wynn, love her, because what she will do is she will do what I did as a SDR, BDR, right? But I'll send like DMs and X, Y, and Z and stuff in response to what you say online. But she'll supplement that with email, and then the reply rate's higher. So she's really good about marrying the two. Social sellers know how to use social media as intent data. And I never, as a social seller, found an intent tool that was helpful. I mean, until I worked at Trender. Trender is really great at this. But the being a social seller is about finding a way to be not just personalized, but also relevant and timely. A lot of salespeople are really good at one or two out of those three things. And social sellers are really good at those three things. And if you're good at those three things, it won't matter what channel you're using as long as it's the channel that your audience prefers.
That's you said that so perfectly. And it's funny because working for a gifting and direct mail company, like we've actually changed our whole like narrative and messaging to be focused on like the outbound marketing perspective, but like to be personal, relevant, and thoughtful. And I feel like the social selling, like it all kind of plays together, and it's an amplification to all those other channels that you're running.
Oh, if I worked at Alice as an SDR, like if I had the ability like to send gifts to my prospects, like the first thing I'd be doing is like looking at the clothing they're wearing and trying to figure out what brand it is, and like send them gift cards to those brands, or send them clothes that like maybe it's this gay stereotype here, but like I can shop for people pretty well, And then there's the other aspect of like, oh, they're drinking this beer in this picture. And they tag themselves at this bar. I'm going to go see what beers this bar is known for selling. I'm going to get them like maybe that beer, or maybe the gift cards of that bar, or whatever the case may be, right? I would use social media as a way to literally stalk you and figure out what it is that you like to do off the clock. And it's not to like buy your time or whatever. It's more to like, I'm paying attention, and like I'll marry that gift of like Like, hey, I saw you post that you hate this, and like that'll be what I send alongside the gift card to the 15th Patagonia shirt that they don't need, you know.
Yeah.
So like that's social selling. And
Yep.
also, by the way, Alice, if you use that idea, I expect a commission. So
I love that. Cool. So I know we're coming up on time. I have a few final questions for you, more so around like what you see for the future, because I am curious, and also advice. And why don't we start with like the advice aspect? Because again, like I mentioned, a lot of people that listen to this are, early in their career, marketers that want to get started, but they don't know how. And I now have a lot of salespeople that listen to this too, which is cool. What tips, like tactical tips, would you give to someone that's new to tech that wants to create, an audience and personal brand for themselves?
I've been told this is not tactical, but the people who get it right do know it's tactical. Within reason, I understand people got to pay the bills, but within reason, make sure that when you take on a job that like you love the ICP. And when I say you love the ICP, I don't mean like you find what they do interesting and fascinating, but like the types of people who typically hold that job you get along with and you click with, you enjoy talking to, you love the product, you would either A, buy it yourself because you are the ICP, or B, if you were the ICP, you could see yourself buying it. And then you need to make sure that the culture of the company is one that empowers you and feels feels good. I have this weird litmus test of like in the first 5 minutes of like a conversation with a company, if I don't get excited and start noticing myself having trouble like not talking over them or getting too excited, I actually don't have interest in working there, because that's just how I know when I'm interested in something. You got to ask yourself what that is for you. All of those things, and I could go on and on, but all of those things will help you be better at this job. All those things will help you be better long term. Listen, I love to chase money too, but if money is in the top 5 factors, you'll actually make less money in the long run. It'll actually cost you more money than you would make. I've watched way too many people in my social circle take a job that pays them $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. And when they go, why do you take the job? They go, the benefits are great, the money's great, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I didn't hear you say how much you love the product, the ICP, or the team. I'm like, so tell me in 3 months when you hate your job, and how you're panicking because you want the money, but you hate the company, because that's really difficult. So focus on that. You'll be better at the job. Look at your career like an IMDb page. Everything I do is on brand with me. Everything I do, and if it is a shift in brand, it's like 1 foot out, 1 foot still in. So that way, like, even my mother who worked for the DOD in the 80s can understand why I'm doing this. Like, she doesn't understand a single word that you and I have said in this entire conversation. She gets it, right? So if she can get it, and she's very smart, but if she can get it, that's the test that's been passed. If Helen Keller, who is deaf, blind, and dead, can get it, then you pass the test.
That's so good too. And I've been in that situation where I've chased money before, and I've hated it 3 months in, and like it's not fun. And like I'm at a point now where like for me, like I don't chase title and comp. Like if I don't enjoy like Alice, like I enjoy what I'm doing every day, because I am the ICP. I have bought Alice before. I have bought other gifting platforms, and like I understand the pain points that they're looking to solve. So like it's a fun space for me to be in. If I was to go to cybersecurity or like developers, which I've done before, and also why I didn't enjoy it, like it's not fun, which is also probably why I'll stay in MarTech or like a MarTech adjacent type role, if I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah, I would say the same. A lot of cybersecurity companies will come to me and I'm like, listen, cool product, but that's it. That's the conversation. Cool product.
Yeah.
I acknowledge the quality of your product. That's it. That's not enough.
100% with you there. Yep, 100%. So, all right. So I want to end this with one final question. Like, where do you see the future of social selling going in 2023? And like, how do you tie in from a social selling? And I know influencer marketing different, but like, how do you marry it all together?
I'm working with some companies right now that are a part of the future of this. So Chili Pepper, one of them. The future of social selling, I think, is going to be a lot more dedication to that. There's going to be a lot more roles that are designed around that. And like, they're going to be hiring for that, or taking the people that are on their team. Like, let's say got like 10 SDRs and like 3 of them are already really good at social selling, but they're doing it as part of their job versus all of their job. moving them into a role where they can focus on that like 40 hours a week, making that their full-time job, right? Because when I was a full-time BDR at Reprise back in the day, like I was a full-time social selling only BDR. And my metrics that I gave myself were like my average new follower count per day, my number of content I released, number of shows I was on and invited to be on, the number of conversations I was starting, whether or not they were with qualified people or not, because I don't know who this person knows. So therefore that counts. I don't care if you're the janitor at this company. You're not my ICP, but you know the CMO because somebody's got to be signing your paycheck, right? So, right. So I'm really excited that there's so many companies now like, oh, we can have full-time in-house mascots. They can be full-time in-house influencers, personal brand builders, social sellers. And while a lot of what they do is not directly tied to revenue, everything they do is directly tied to the things that are tied to revenue. I actually just turned down a job offer from a company that asked me to measure what I do at their company as a community marketer in the context of numbers and meetings booked. I'm like, no. I will be booking meetings, don't get me wrong. But a community marketer is measured on the effect it has on the people who do book the meetings all day, not on the number of meetings it directly books. That will happen by proxy. But my job is to lay down the foundation to make that better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more companies are looking at this because community marketing, I think, has had a couple years head start. Now they're going, okay, if the one-to-many is working, now let's funnel money into the one-to-one, which is the social selling.
That's such a great breakdown. Amazing. All right, Evan, where can people go? Obviously, connect with you, learn more, DM you, some education.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find me on Instagram or on Twitter. Just search my name, it'll pop up, Evan Patterson. I'm also on TikTok, and if you find me at my house, I will sue you. But yeah, find me every place else. And if you're in Chicago or Boys Town, like DM me, don't stalk me, and we'll get drinks at Sidetrack. Shout out Sidetrack in Boys Town. North Halstead, yeah.
Amazing. Evan, thank you so much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Of course, and thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure chatting with you as well, and I hope that a bunch of other people are going to learn from this, and maybe 2023 will be a less friction-filled year for social sellers.
Thank you for listening to Rep Your Brand. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And if you learned something new today, it'd be great if you left us a review. We'll catch you next time.